These events are natural, they're cyclical, they're electromagnetic, and it's solar system wide. So there's really nothing that we as humans or humanity on this planet can do about these larger, more powerful, heavier cycles that come and interfere with our civilization on a regular pattern, on a regular time frame, on a regular cycle. Some of our world can be salvaged.
Yeah.
Some of it cannot be. But in any business, if you're running this planet as a farm or a business, then you would already start to clip off the vine of these areas that would not survive anyway through this natural cycle.
Well,
and you would transfer what you could to the new usable part of the earth that they think will make it through this cycle relatively unscathed.
It's unknown if early man knew they would be the progenitors of great civilizations, or if they knew when their empires would fall and disappear into history. Fortunately for us as modern man, we can recognize that we are at the precipice. A point in history where we can see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us.
welcome to today's interview on Brighteon.com. I'm Mike Adams, and today we're joined by a fan favorite, repeat guest, David DuByne with Adapt 2030. And today we're going to be talking about disruptions to the food supply chain, alignments of planets, and so much more, things stemming from the Crowdstrike IT apocalypse. Welcome to the show today, David. It's great to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It seems pertinent right now that a lot of information seems to be dovetailing or layering on top for this perfect storm of scatterwave to keep everybody distracted from the real things that are going on that would mostly affect every human on the planet.
Yeah, people are getting a sense that there's a lot of crazy things happening, and let's start with this Crowdstrike situation, which many people believe was deliberately caused by someone, perhaps a rogue employee or an infiltrated employee. I'm not blaming the Crowdstrike company itself, but their infrastructure may have been exploited or hacked to allow this to happen. This has brought down, according to the CEO, 8.5 million Windows servers that run everything from government to transportation, airlines, supply chains, bank, and finance. There was an insurance industry analysis of this event that just came out that's currently estimating losses, real losses of over $5 billion from this, just from this, and that the insurance industry is on the hook for about 20% of that, or about $1 billion. So this is going to result in all kinds of insurance claims, loss of business continuity, things like that, which are, partially paid by a lot of these policies. So the insurance industry is also going to take a big hit, which means they're going to be raising insurance rates on everybody else as well, all because of this.
As we're moving forward here, I think they're trying to get scheduled on some timelines, because I would ask everybody out there this one single question. If there was this much problem with CrowdStrike and all of the enterprise systems across the world that are in at least Fortune 500 companies, what's going to happen with central bank digital currencies on a centralized ledger for a global initiative to have a worldwide pegged currency of 1-to-1 for a global reserve currency on is on some sort of ledger? If they're coming back with the same types of encryption, that's going to require some handling in a data file for a JSON file. Look at the dangers that's presented. They're trying to sell you CBDCs, but we saw one of the most epic failures ever seen, but they're still trying to push forward with the CBDCs. Like, you got to ask a few questions here. The narrative is broken.
It's not going to take long if they try to force everybody into a CBDC. Cyber hackers around the world are going to bring that thing to its knees in no time. Maybe even an inside job could bring it down, just like what we saw with CrowdStrike. So it won't take long before CBDCs are shown to be not reliable. I mean, even with this CrowdStrike attack, grocery stores reverted to cash, right? So, you want to eat, you better have cash. I mean, that's the upshot of it.
Howdy, partner. People are having dinner and the smart ones are eating beef. Let me tell you a brief history, or more accurately, a beef history of dinner. Domestication of cattle happened around 8000 BC, but that's not when beef became what's for dinner. We've been eating beef since times before history. The earliest cave paintings have beef eloquently depicted on the walls. Those cave drawings of the hunt were for the aurochs, a primitive bovine. That's right, beef, Like I said, people are having dinner now, and the smart ones, well, they're eating beef. Americans want great food today, but we also want to have great food to eat if things go south in a hurry. Unlike most companies that take the cheapest, worst parts of the cow, then turn them into beef crumbles, whatever that is. They freeze-dry them in hopes that their customers will never actually try to eat it. Our premium beef cubes are sous vide, freeze-dried, and ready to be eaten right now, or in a decade from now. We want you to eat our beef now, so you can buy more. Prep with steaks, not with beef crumbles. This is a high-quality product. It's all American beef and 100% natural. None of that craziness of lab-grown meat and mRNA jabs. Our beef has a shelf life of 10 plus years. This is high-quality cooked and freeze-dried beef for long-term storage or not. Eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Click the link in the description to get your Prepper beef with Prepper All Naturals, so you will always know what's for dinner.
I did a full video just on the food implications of that, because a lot of people were covering airlines, and that was the big thing, that, you know, people sleeping in the terminals. What they weren't really showing you were the enormous amount of self-checkout counters that were rendered inoperable, and also the debit cards weren't swiping correctly. And then also another thing that, you know, you may have cash, but you got to consider this. The bar swipe code reader, if it was inoperable, or if the item you swiped didn't come up with the numerical value like 1 or 2, like you're buying 2 bags of rice or 1 bag of rice, if it came up as a non-designated number on that, they wouldn't sell it to you, because it would throw off their ordering system. So even if you had the cash and that item wasn't swiping correctly, they would say you can't buy that one, because it would throw off all of the intricate ordering that we have right now. So you may have cash, but like if it goes down any further, we're just going to simply close the store. And this might be repeatable across all of the United States, where if enough systems go down, where you can't check out, cards aren't working, inventory barcode swipes aren't working, they're going to close you out, because that's going to cause too much problem on the back end of sending out a few hundred items or 1,000 items to the day that came off the shelf, that nobody's going to write those barcodes down. So how do you, balance and adjust that ordering a system again after 1 or 2 days of that?
Right.
Companies don't want the headache. You're the last thing they worry about, of getting you food into your children's mouth and your family's mouth. They don't care. They're worried about them having to hire extra overtime to try to balance out. And what's the ROI of you starving versus them having to bring in 20 extra people to do inventory?
Well, yeah, exactly. But I'm thinking that we've reached this point in society where we've become totally dependent on technology, but now the technology has escaped our control. And part of that's just because of widespread incompetence. And if you think about it, like, how could the whole Western world have been so reliant on one company's code and have opened up all their systems to the pushing of one file from one company that brought down literally millions of systems? That is a crazy, dangerous centralization of control and dependency on technology.
Because again, I would ask everybody out there listening, look at the global level. Like, what else is wired in that dominates? Undersea cables would be another one. If you take out some undersea cables, you knock out literally the internet of the world. But what other ones are out there that are at such a behemoth of global level where that takes out an enormous amount of businesses across the planet, or communications, or food systems?
Well, Swift. I mean,
Swift,
banking
exactly.
backbone, right? So yeah, if you take out the transactional capabilities, then nothing happens. There's no food, there's no fuel, there's no transportation, nothing. And it seems like we're not far from that. It also seems to me like there could be an effort to deliberately unleash that upon us.
Yeah, and the danger in that too, for those of you who are unaware out there, our agricultural system here in America revolves on credit. So if the farmers don't have the ability to pre-purchase seed and repair parts and fertilizers and the gamut of things, fuel, oils, etc., we're not going to have any food. So if there is such a large banking crisis where credit dries up or is non-available, and there is literally no liquidity out there, that is going to directly affect the farmers themselves.
Yeah.
And then all those other steps in between, getting from the farm to your table. I mean, no credit, we have no food.
You've been tracking a lot of other things that are happening as well. You sent me some images of the planets and things that are approaching, I think, in October of this year. You want to walk us through some of that?
And my analysis of this entire just full spectrum distraction wave that we're out in the middle of right now, these events are natural, they're cyclical, they're electromagnetic, and it's solar system wide. So there's really nothing that we as humans or humanity on this planet can do about these larger, more powerful, heavier cycles that come and interfere with our civilization on a regular pattern, on a regular time frame, on a regular cycle. I just wanted to start with the first one where it compares 2024 with 79 AD, because this puts it into perspective for you. The four gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are going to square themselves, and was as close to a perfect square as our solar system can provide in the orbits that we have. Then the Earth will be in the center, and the sun will be on the backside of us. So our Earth is going to loop through two different magnetic fields. So if you put this in perspective and you understand that there's vast electric changes, electromagnetic changes, gravitational changes, and weather system changes, and the perception of humanity on how they see reality in front of them, this screen that we call our lives in front of us is decoded through your brain. But you have those two hemispheres of the brain, and Mike, you can talk about this far better than I. They're electrically connected, and you need a magnetic field for that to run in and be operable. No magnetic field, no electrical connections, you're dead. Literally, there's no way for your brain to function. Now we're coming into a time in the last 2,000 years where there's going to be some very strange anomalies in those same fields that I just mentioned. So if those are going to change or morph, even percentages, not 10%, 15, 50%, but just small percentages up or down, the way you see reality, you're actually going to see the auras of these demons around us come to life. And at that point, how would you distract you set up this entire mechanism for 50, 70 years, at least in this iteration, to get these last three generations to believe what it is that reality is. It's been carefully constructed for the masses to stay and do their jobs, go to war, build the roads, and then the rest stay on top with their piles of immense treasure. If we can see through this, even for a fleeting few seconds, then the world as we had it constructed for us completely shatters. Now that's just one aspect, but then we're looking at the weather amplifications, the volcanic amplifications, the earth cracks, and these different sideline wind anomalies, the intense hail sizes. And this is record floods going on every continent at all times. And there is definitely a measurable uptick at the moment. And I absolutely say it is because we're coming into the most intense period here in October of 2024. And we're seeing the uptick. Everything you're seeing with this intensity increase is all related to that. Now, be the governments on the planet and you're understanding the same timelines on this. And I really believe a lot of these things that we're seeing right now, they're going to have to get more grandiose, the distractions even larger, and perhaps, like you said, completely take grids or internet down or electricity down to bring people to that primal fear level and then let this wave sweep by without them noticing. They'll be too skittish in a chaotic survival mode for them to realize that some sort of different, the way they're looking at the world is different. But at that point, when it comes back online again, these controllers may have upped the ante and have a different system in place by that point.
Can we back up a little bit? Because you've said some very profound things, and I have a lot of questions. I'm not quite tracking everything here. So you're saying that because of the alignment of the planets and the way that their magnetic fields line up and interact with Earth, that there's going to be a change in the consciousness perception of Earth people that are going to get somehow cosmically red-pilled or something, or they're going to see through lies? You said they're going to see the auras of demons. What do you mean exactly?
Well, those electrical connections within our brain on those lobes, they're going to be more amplified. And the magnetic field of our Earth itself in relation to that magnetic transference from the sun to that, outer system of the bunching of those planets together, the Earth is right in the center of that. So electromagnetically, things are going to be moving faster in a faster vibratory field as we come through this. And again, will it be a permanent cognition fix? I don't know if it would be, or would it be that you're able to see something for a short period of time that way you just question that's wait, what am I seeing? And then it would come back into sort of normalcy again after we pass out of that field. So yeah, there's a lot of unknowns here. One thing that is known is there should be higher tides during this time, like approximately 1 week to 2 weeks coming into the end of October 2024. There should be higher tides. So like we consider king tides, but that'll just be happening everywhere on the planet where there's a sea coast, and they won't be able to explain why. And you just look for higher tides. This is another thing that's really gaining a lot of different event traction in those media that follow extreme weather events, et cetera. Like these abnormal tidal events are happening globally right now as well. And then we got these volcanoes that are starting to go off. But again, it would be expected with magnetic field changes on our planet and the sun and the solar system. So couple all these together, how as a global governance system that has locked citizens down for these last several 100 years, I'll just say 100, not 1,000, but the way we've been manipulated and programmed into believing that the world is as it is now, that program is going to come unlocked there for a minute during these different magnetic field changes. And Mike, I hope I could ask you a question about like the different electrical signals between the lobes of the brain, like the interference pattern on that, or the amplification on the electrical signaling coming through in a different magnetic field. Like how would you physiologically, how would that work inside your brain? And then the way that you actually see light coming in, or what you might hear coming in on the auditory senses.
Well, I would say it would take a very strong magnetic field in order to, really alter perceptions. So one of my questions about this, I mean, people sit inside MRI scanning machines, right? And they scan their brains, and those are very strong local magnetic fields.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food, if you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food, even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
I don't know. Are there any reports? Do people hallucinate when that's happening? Do people have altered brain function? I mean, that would be an interesting thing to ask. My thinking about what you're saying would be just that these planets are so far away, even though, of course, they're very large, obviously much larger than Earth, but they're so far away that how could the impact on human brains be large enough to, to amp up cognition? And even if cognition were amped up, in some cases, wouldn't that just be like seizures, Some people, their brains would just go into overdrive and they would have seizures or they would have hallucinations. I mean, I'm just asking you, how do we know that this would be a good thing? Like, why would we say that people would see the truth about things? Maybe they all just go bonkers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not
Like
saying a good
zombie
thing or a
planet.
bad thing. I'm just saying it is, and a possibility of an event. I don't know. It seems that the amplification, whatever it is on the same timeline of the, I don't know, exponential quickening to try to move us to different systems seems to be part of this trajectory also. Like, I don't know if they understand something about this magnetic field pattern that allows that the timing on it thousands of years apart, and then all of the sudden quick movings of our world all overlaid right on top of these months. It's just a little quirky and difficult for me to believe that it's all just random happenstance. Planetary geometry not seen in thousands of years reoccurs right now. So I'm just putting it out there as on the event horizon for something to take a look at and be aware of. But one thing that is measurable are the amount of volcanoes that are increasing, the intensity of the storms, the sideline winds, the hail, and then all these earth cracks are beginning across South America. This in itself overlaps and correlates on something electromagnetic that is absolutely changing our Earth and the ability for us to continue to grow food on a plant buy and harvest date that's been, scheduled out for hundreds of years.
So yeah, and on top of that, I mean, just getting back to earthly practical things, we ran a story about how I think it's the UK government is ordering farmers to or not plant food crops, but plant bird seed instead. So now the farms are being turned into bird seed fields. And of course, in the Netherlands and other countries across Europe, they're destroying farms, shutting down ranching operations. And in the US, as you know, David, there's been a lot of sabotage of food infrastructure. So there's a very clear, very practical effort to cause global famine. Would you agree with that?
I would. And now the first official global methane taxes have started. So since you mentioned over there, it's about, let's see, the UK, England wants to do a 200-pound per animal per year tax for methane. And then in the rest of the greater EU, it's €100 per cow per year as a tax in addition to for the farmer to pay just because of methane.
Wow.
And if we look at China right now too, I don't know if you've been following, the massive floods over there have just absolutely wreaked havoc across their central growing area. So the numbers I have so far is China has lost 15% of its rice crops so far. And they are absolutely going to be out on the world market looking for an enormous amount of additional imports this year because they have lost just so much.
So what percentage of the rice crop did you say was destroyed?
About 15.
Okay. So that's really bad given that China already can't feed its own people. I mean, it's buying up, as you know, corn and rice and soy and everything all over the world to import that just to cover its own needs. And now if you have these losses on top of that, that's pretty devastating for China. As far as I know, China's not deliberately shutting down their farms, right?
Oh, the contrary. They're going off into Africa and putting extra investment there to try to bring African resources online.
Yeah.
The below ground water resources is a big one nobody talks about. I mean, Gaddafi had drilled down into the Nubian sandstone aquifer and was pumping that water above ground to irrigate like it was 100,000 acres of sorghum in their test plots out there where the old basin of the mega lakes were southern Libya. Obviously, China and Russia understand that above ground water's increasing, and then you can tap all those hundreds of thousands of cubic kilometers of water beneath Africa. And yeah, they're going off in different places around the world. They're buying our farmland, but they're also over in Africa setting up all the infrastructure to grow food and then send it along the maritime string of pearls back to China and then unload at Jakpu port over in northern Myanmar.
So China is building infrastructure to feed its people, to survive, to thrive, to grow. The West is destroying infrastructure to starve its people and to destroy society, economic collapse, shutting down energy infrastructure, pipelines, coal-fired power plants, all of that. I mean, wow, what a contrast, huh?
Well, it's just a transference. I mean, the next 80-year cycle, the next, the Strauss and Howe forturning, that money needs to go somewhere to restart the debt system. So if everybody out there is thinking this is all just like, hey, it's the bad BRICS versus the good, West over here, this is nothing more than a scripted transference of all wealth on the planet to a new location to restart the system. It's nothing more. Everything is choreographed and scripted. What you're seeing out here is the largest screenplay in real time, and everybody you see at these highest of levels is an actor. At least in my opinion, most. And everybody, and if you haven't noticed by now, all countries and all government leaders across the entire planet are moving like a school of fish in unison. So there's no more individuality. It seems like our globe has been either compromised and come under complete control on a global level, or there's something else going on where their continuity of government is they all understand there's a massive event inbound, and they all need to work in coordinated effort to get this. And by doing that, the hopes for survival for quote unquote humanity, the odds will be better. But again, that could be it. That sounds like a movie also, doesn't it?
It does. But you just said that there's a massive event inbound, and that brings up a lot of questions. I've interviewed other experts who say, for example, that there's a giant a planetary mass in the solar system. In its gravity orbit would bring in a barrage of meteors that would strike, many areas, many cities, even on Earth, like nuclear weapons, right? But they're actually just rocks falling out of the sky. Do you think that the globalists are aware of some well-known major event, like maybe like not just a magnetic flip, but a pole shift type of event or something along those lines that they're not telling us about, but they know it's coming?
You got to think, if there was an event that was known, would governments come out and tell you point blank, hey, in 2045, there's going to be a micronova. Hey, in 2030, this event. Oh, by the way, in October of this year, there's a possibility of a perturbation in the electromagnetic field that'll cause higher tides and disrupt quite a few weather patterns that grow our crops reliably. You wouldn't, because people would stop investing. People wouldn't see that tomorrow our financial markets would collapse as everybody pulled money out to go, start getting prepared for this.
Now, bringing back what you mentioned earlier, the psychological events that are happening, I think a lot of people listening to this would say that people are losing their minds. There's a lot of craziness happening, and it seems to be amping up. And in your view, David, I think what you're saying is that this is not random. This is connected to cosmic events. Is that fair to say that?
It has been. And, there's always these segments of society, I don't care how far back in history you go, that are the sky watchers for the leaders of countries or emperors or kings, whatever, that leader was called through history. It's always been like this. The only reason we have a stable climate on the planet is because our sun allows us the luxury for these last 200 years of some of the most stable climate we've had in the last 12,000 years has been in these last 200. Now, this is starting to vary right now where you're starting to see it. You're starting to see animals behave differently. Now, if they're behaving differently, you think the human is just another animal that, we would start to, resonate with that, things are off, magnetic fields are off. And it's not going to be just an instantaneous event where people start to flip their minds and, just freak out and, like you say, seizures. And so imagine if this has been a gradual uptick for the last 2 or 3 years of slow intensification, which makes sense on how the world seems to be more out of step or more out of kilter as we move toward into these events. But when our sun changes, whatever it does, either really low solar activity bringing us into an ice age where that is a dim ball in the sky, or it's an extremely excited sun like it was in the 1990s, which is the highest solar activity we had in 3,000 years, occurred in the 1990s, and that has subsequently stepped off. The sun drives our world. The sun absolutely is responsible for the apex of our civilization and the decline of our civilization over these time periods that we see of the great cultures through history have risen and fallen. They fell because conditions on our planet changed for the ability for us to grow food in a stable, predictable manner. We're back at it again, and I'm absolutely saying the elites very much understand that this cycle is here. Some of our world can be salvaged.
Yeah.
Some of it cannot be. But in any business, if you're running this planet as a farm or a business, then you would already start to clip off the vine of these areas that would not survive anyway through this natural cycle.
Well,
and you would transfer what you could to the new usable part of the earth that they think will make it through this cycle relatively unscathed.
so from what you're saying, I mean, even thinking about politics and elections and so on, it's a distraction from the fact that our entire planet is about to become radically overhauled, and the future civilizations on this planet will not be named, the United States of America, probably. I mean, you're talking about some very radical changes here.
Oh, as been through history, the radical change is the one where we've had for the last 200 years of being incredibly stable. That's the radical. The normal is flip-flopping changes that are very disruptive. We are just so lucky and so blessed. You should really just be praying every day and just please let this stability in our weather hold on so we can continue to grow crops. Now, it could be a devastating event. It just depends how the media would handle it and get people on board and get them to cooperate and get people more autonomous. Being able to, work in communities as much you do and I do to get some of our own food growing under our belts, know some of our neighbors, take security into our own hands versus waiting on others to facilitate that. And that includes firefighting, by the way. So when you look across the board, we're in a crossroad right now where it can go either direction. And see, that's the most hopeful message. It's the most opportunity in human history, but it's just how the media is going to work with us or against us to get us to cooperate or show us or teach us these different ways, at least the regular people who are unaware of this, to get them ready for the changes, both mentally, physically, spiritually. And I hope there is some divine guidance in this as well, because we absolutely need it.
I don't see any sense of cohesion being pushed by the powers that be now from the grassroots up. Yeah, people want to get along and live peacefully together and so on, but sadly, they're not in charge of the power centers of our world today.
It's unknown if early man knew they would be the progenitors of great civilizations, or if they knew when their empires would fall and disappear into history. Fortunately for us as modern man, we can recognize that we are at the precipice, a point in history where we can see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us.
Pro Clear Cleanse is the most powerful spray cleaner on the market today. No elbow grease necessary. Pro Clear Cleanse cuts through grease and grime like a chef's knife. Finally, the one cleaner that can do it all. Powerful surfactant cleaning technology cleans ovens, glass, porcelain, even polished wood. Environmentally friendly, less packaging and waste with no harsh smells, pet safe, child safe. 5 tablets equals 1 bottle of traditional cleaner. It's 5 months of cleaning for a fraction of the cost. Behold the grease-erasing power of Odor Crush. Simply drop a tablet into your bottle of warm water and shake it so it is evenly diluted. Spray the surface you want cleaned. Let set longer for tougher grease. Take a paper towel or a reusable cloth and wipe. Done and done.